What is up, everyone? Welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Tonight, we will be talking about the three free agents that are flying under the radar for Dallas Cowboys. A lot of places, people are talking about Jaron Kears, Keanu Neal, Leighton Vander Esch, all of the free agents that we already know about. And I wanted to dive into maybe a little bit of this under the radar guys that I also believe were very important for the Dallas Cowboys in 2021, and it is in the interest of the team to maybe stick with them. So we'll talk about that throughout tonight's show. We will also get into a little bit of comp picks conversation. And as every Tuesday, it is Random Thought Tuesday here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. So make sure you start thinking about that random thought because I will ask for you guys about that. What is up, Bruce? Got the use over at YouTube. Samuel Rowe, thank you for being here as well. Let's start the show officially. Guys, please hit the like button, share the show. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let your friends know about ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Without further ado, let's start the show officially right away. Here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm Mauricio Rodríguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network, with a lot more content coming your way throughout the entire 2021 offseason, 2022, offseason. Make sure you check out adcsports.com/Dallas for more Cowboys content, more Mavericks content. You can check that out over there. And tonight on the show, we will talk about three relevant free agents that are flying a little bit under the radar. I'm talking about some players that, you know what, really, I think we have not talked about them three enough. And you can guess one of them because he's there in your screens right now. Shout out to the podcast audience. They maybe are living a little bit in a mystery yet if they're listening to this on audio only. But yeah, three free agent guys, three Cowboys that are set to be free agents that are flying a little bit under the radar. We'll talk about that tonight. First, let me shout out some of you guys in the chat. What is up, Dallas Young? What is up, Peter Rizzo? Stevie Mack, thank you for being here. As always, reminding people to smash that thumbs up and, of course, share the stream. Morad kicking off a banger of a show. This is Ryan Doyle. Thank you. I appreciate it. Lumen, what is up? Chalk, Iceberg saying, bring back Brent Urban. So I will jump right ahead to free agent number one that, in my opinion, is flying under the radar. What is up, Johnny, Glenn? Thank you for being here in tonight's show. Brent Urban. I think he's the player that might be flying the most under the radar. If you take a look at the Cowboys' defensive tackles and the snap counts, and we will talk a lot about snap counts today, because I think that even if you are talking about, statistics and all of that, maybe some players do not jump right out of the page right away. But when you take a look at snap counts, you start to understand, in my opinion, how important they are to the Cowboys or to any specific NFL team. Even when they are not playing great football, even if they're playing poorly, to me, snap counts are always relevant because it talks to you about the void that they would leave in any given defense. And in the case of Brent Urban, you're talking about a guy that finished the season at about 14% of defensive snaps, of course, because of his season-ending triceps injury. We didn't know it was going to be a season-ending injury right away, but soon enough, his wife shared with us on Twitter. Remember that in case you guys didn't remember that. She was actually the one who broke the news, and she talked about Brent Urban getting season-ending surgery. Brent Urban was fighting hard to come back into the playing field, but it didn't end up happening for the Cowboys defensive tackle. However, through those first 6 weeks of the season, Brent Urban was playing 40% of the snaps. That's the average participation that Brent Urban had on his Cowboys, on this Cowboys defense. And I think we kind of overlooked that a little bit. And you take a look at some other snap counts at the defensive tackle position. And of course, you're talking about Justin Hamilton playing in about 20% of the snaps, filling in for guys. Mostly, I think that was more than anything Justin Hamilton's role. I like Hamilton, by the way, but I think Brent Urban was more important throughout those first 6 weeks of the season. And I for sure would like Brent Urban back. We know what kind of defensive tackle he is. He is this player that is an anchor for the run defense. He finished 2020 as one of the best run stoppers in the NFL, according to PFF. Maybe that didn't translate, that fully translated into the PFF numbers to start 2021. But hey, he was playing good for the Cowboys. He was playing quite well. I say it actually might be Brian Anger. This is Johnny Lopez talking about the players that might be flying under the radar. Hey, I didn't include him on my top 3 list, but I think that's another free agent that you might be talking about him in that context, right? In that context of being under the radar and free agents that you need back. I agree with Johnny. Brian Anger, you need to bring him back. Now, resign or replace Brent Urban. What would you say? Exotic says replace right away. Exotic knew what the question was before I put it out on the chat. What do you guys think? Brent Urban, resign or replace? Iceberg asking, is Anger a free agent? He is, actually. He is set to hit free agency. Surely, I believe the Cowboys will find a way to keep him around. Gregory saying, please bring back Dorance Armstrong, please. C. Burleson disagrees with what I just said with the Brian Anger conversation. C says, I don't think that we can keep Anger. He's an All-Pro and might want that back. He's an All-Pro. He was in the Pro Bowl, and a lot of noise was around Brian Anger. So you know he will be looked at by different teams. My guess right now would be he makes it to free agency, fields some offers, and the Cowboys end up keeping him. Hopefully, that's what happens. Dallas Young says, Urban is solid, but I think we could find a similar player in free agency, so I will say replace. Let's see. Some of your guys' answers. Stevie Max says replace. Replace SC. Samuel Rose says resign. Wow. Actually, I was expecting more resign answers for Brent Urban. Lunatic says resign. He is coming off an injury, so he should be cheap. Whew. Felipe is spot on with this one. We really don't do free agency, says Felipe over there at Facebook. That's something that we shouldn't forget, maybe. But yeah, hey, Brent Urban, one of those players that I believe might be flying under the radar, and I would re-sign him. I also think he maybe wouldn't be the most expensive free agent of all. I agree with Felipe. The Cowboys don't really do free agency, as ironic as it may sound when we're discussing a player that was signed in free agency. I don't know how many players are out there that you can feel that they are an upgrade over Brent Urban in terms of market value. Like if you want to bring in a defensive tackle, more or less with the price tag that Brent Urban came in with, I don't know that there are many of those out there. So I will say resign for Brent Urban. Now, my number 2 player, and hey, these are actually defensive linemen. I think we have not talked about this enough. And also, just a small parenthesis, man, Stevie Mac just mentioned something that was quite crazy. Shout out to Tony Pollard for liking Sky's IG post today. Sky posted something on TikTok, and it's a real TikTok. Sorry, that's one of those things that makes me look like a boomer even at 22 years old. I get confused with the reels and / TikTok terminology. Anyways, after that parenthesis, within a parenthesis, he put out a TikTok reacting to the hiring of Robert Prince in which Sky says something like, and I will paraphrase because I don't remember the exact words, but Sky says something like, why don't you bring someone that is going to get Tony Pollard more snaps instead of just 3 to 4 snaps and lose the football game. And Tony Pollard liked that on the ADC Sports Dallas IG account. In case you wanna check that out, you can still see it, I believe, over there in the Instagram account. So that was something. I'm pretty sure that Sky will touch on this topic tomorrow morning. So make sure you guys tune in to the ADC Sports Dallas morning show tomorrow, because that's going to be quite interesting. And usually we make a lot maybe out of players hitting the like button on certain articles or tweets, things like that. But that was definitely something. So Iceberg says, replace with what though? And that is a super fair, answer, but just like maybe a bit of a prediction there in the comments. What is up, Kenneth Fraser? Thank you for tuning in to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. All right, so having said that, let's close out that parenthesis and let's get to the number two free agent that is flying under the radar, in my opinion. And someone already mentioned him, actually, but Dorance Armstrong. How come we are not talking about the fact that Dorance Armstrong played in 44% of the Dallas Cowboys defensive snaps? And not only that, but put that into perspective. So Randy Gregory, we all know, missed some time. He wasn't able to play the full season. He ended up playing, was it 12 games, I believe, this season? 12 games, I believe, is the correct number. But even in spite of that, I'm actually surprised that Randy Gregory ended the season with a lower snap count than Dorance Armstrong. And I was surprised by that, because I would have thought that maybe the fact that Randy Gregory was considered more of a full-time starter was going to end up with a higher snap count, or at least tied. But it was 44% to Randy's 37%. Dorance Armstrong had one less sack than 94, says Lunatic. Wow. Exactly. Armstrong was actually quite underrated. And I think something that, and we discussed it on Primetime, but maybe not as much. Armstrong was sort of a hybrid player on Dan Quinn's defense as well. And Quinn didn't shy away from using 92 to drop back into coverage and take the flats or the curl zones, or just like those underneath zones from time to time. He was not afraid to use Dorance Armstrong as this mucked up sort of linebacker look. And of course, he's a defensive end, don't get me wrong. But we saw Dorance Armstrong in those A-gaps, mucked up, threatening with the blitz, and then sometimes rushing the passer and sometimes dropping back into coverage. So Dan Quinn, I believe, likes Armstrong quite a bit. And it seems like he might be this underrated player. And that show that we had Sky on, or I don't remember if this was, this was on Primetime, because we had the crossovers a few weeks ago, and I couldn't remember if it was in the morning show or in the Primetime show. But no, it was here when Sky and I were discussing some of these free agents. And actually, kind of my prediction was that maybe Armstrong ends up getting paid more than we expect him to be paid. And I'm talking about elsewhere. Hopefully, the Dallas Cowboys are able to stay with him. The question, of course, for you guys in the chat is the same one. Dorance Armstrong, is he a re-sign or is he a replace kind of player? What do you guys think? To me, it's a surefire re-sign. Kenneth Fraser says over at Facebook, shout out to the Facebook audience, he was underrated for sure. Armstrong had a great 2021 season, says Gregory. Cowboys Can Fan Podcast, what is up? Says Armstrong also doesn't get penalties that make you want to smash your head on a table, like 94. Man, that Trent Williams, I was watching a lot of Trent Williams tape the other day, and at least I'm not that upset about those 49ers penalties anymore, because that little thing that he does with the leg, and he has been doing so since week 1 of the regular season, I still don't know if that is just like a loophole in the false start rule, or why isn't he called for that slight leg movement that he does before the snap. But yeah, and then there was the, what was it? Was it the, what game was it with the unnecessary roughness penalties and all of that? That was frustrating. Resign says Kenneth Fraser. Samuel says replays, 1 year wonder. Oh, interesting. Stevie Mac says depends on the price, but if they cut D-Law, definitely bring Dorance Armstrong back. I am blown away, by the way, just a small parenthesis. I am blown away by the Lawrence rumors that are going around on social media, and maybe some people are talking about this. People are talking about letting Lawrence go, and that is something that I just cannot get behind. Thank you to Jay Cena, who is asking people to hit the like button using another adjective before the like button. But hey, I'm not going to say that word. However, thank you to Jay Cena. I appreciate it. Kenneth Fraser says resign. Lumen says I'm on the fence again. Hey, that is valid. That is definitely valid. Let's see. Replaces Alonso Soriano. What is up? Resign immediately. Cowboys can fan podcast resign, but we can't afford. That is more or less how I feel about Armstrong right now. But now, the number 3 guy, and you might be thinking, Mo is not about to mention a third defensive lineman. That wouldn't be ethical, maybe. Mo will not go with a defensive lineman again. But I will. I will, because I think that Carlos Watkins is a player that is also flying under the radar, and I feel like we're not talking enough about him either. Carlos Watkins, is he a resign or a replace player for you? He got into, oh yes, I agree with the resign, Kenneth, by the way. Kenneth is asking if I agree with the Dorance Armstrong thing. I agree with the resign, but I don't believe, like right now, I would guess, my guess would be, my educated prediction would be that he ended up signing elsewhere for more money than we would expect him to sign with the Cowboys. Now, Watkins played in 38% of the team snaps. And we like to talk a lot about if they play 1 technique or 3 technique. I would forget about that with Carlos Watkins, because even though he played primarily as a 1 technique, he also showed a lot of versatility, and he showed that he can play in both places, in both defensive tackle spots. Replaced, but shout out to Watkins, says TV Mac, for surprising all of us and playing decent. Gregory says resign, replace Carlos. These are tough, Mo, says Iceberg. They are tough. They are tough. And I'm actually surprised that we have not talked about this yet. And the reason why we have not talked about these guys is that the Cowboys have a top-heavy free agency class, and we're thinking about the bigger names. We're thinking about DeMonte Casey, Jaron Kears, and we kind of forgot about those players across the defensive line that are going to be important. Because, hey, we were mentioning Dorance Armstrong, who played in 44% of the snaps, Carlos Watkins, 38%, and Urban, while he was healthy, played in over 40% of the snaps. So these 3 players, at least, Brent Urban might be the exception because of his injury, but if you extend those numbers throughout the regular season, these guys were in for 4 out of 10 plays on defense. These guys are important. So I will say resign. I'm all for bringing back Carlos Watkins. I was impressed by him. I had my doubts when the Cowboys had signed him on the roster. I wasn't sure about him making the roster, but he ended up not only doing that, but also earning a starter job right away at the beginning of the season. He was a starter for the Cowboys, and I believe that he is a very cost-effective player. I think that you can bring him back without signing him to a multi-year deal or anything like that, and he would help the Cowboys out a lot. Stevie Max is replaced. Oh, I think I had already read that comment. Felipe says, "Where are you from?" I am from Mexico. Thank you for asking. Lawrence and Cooper, says Chevy, should restructure their contracts to stay in Dallas. What do you think? I've been an advocate for restructuring Cooper's contract for a while here on Primetime. Right after the season ended, I don't see, and this is my take, of course, I don't see how moving on from Amari Cooper makes sense. Sure, it opens up some space in the salary cap, but you're still taking a step backwards, I believe, on offense, and a huge step backwards, by the way. And with Lawrence, it might work too. I'm all for restructuring Lawrence as well. I believe that, hey, do I have those numbers here? Let me see if I can find them real quick. No, I deleted that overlay. But we discussed this a few weeks ago, and I was on the same page as Chevy. Like, I am all for restructuring those guys. I know that we're talking about players maybe moving on from those. Well, not moving on is not the correct term. I know that we've talked about these players opening so much space in the Cowboys salary cap, but the fact that you're taking a couple of steps backwards is what I don't get. So I would definitely consider restructuring their contracts. And we did mention the numbers, right? If you cut Amari Cooper, you open up $16 million in the salary cap space. And according to overthecap.com, if you restructure his deal, you open up about $12 million. So I don't know. I put things in a balance and I say Amari Cooper is going to be 28 years old in 2022. And the difference between cutting him and restructuring his contract is about $4 million less than if you cut him. And of course, the fact that you are making a long-term commitment with the player. But I'm all for it because I believe in Amari Cooper long-term. I do. So there's that. If you're already considering getting rid of Cooper and D-Law, why push more money down the road? And this is a fair question from Dallas Young, but I think that considering is more than anything from a financial standpoint. I don't think that you are considering moving on from these guys because of level of play. At least that's what I think the Cowboys mindset is right now. Because sure, I know that Lawrence gets some hate and Cooper even gets some hate from Cowboys Nation, but who doesn't? Who doesn't get some hate within the Dallas Cowboys? Do you guys think I am misreading the whole situation? I think that the conversation about moving on from these players is more than anything financial and not really about their level of play. So that is why I would consider pushing more money down the road. I think that Amari Cooper is a player that the Cowboys should trust in the long term, and I feel similarly about DeMarcus Lawrence. I think they should do long term with Amari Cooper, says Kenneth Fraser. Guru says Amari is a good player, not a great one, not one that takes over and gives difficulty to elite cornerbacks. Key challenge, says Guru, is Lamb stepping up as a lead wide receiver, Gallup recovering per ACL, and the team retaining Wilson. I don't think that Gallup and Wilson stay, and I think that for you to keep, at the same time, and I think that for Gallup to stay, you also maybe do need to maybe move on from Amari Cooper or something like that. I don't see the Cowboys starting three coming back, though, in 2022. Like, I would assume that at least one of those three is going to be gone. So I agree with Guru. That is quite the challenge for the Dallas Cowboys. I will tell you what I want from Lamb. I don't know if I need him to step up as the lead wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. But what I want the most is for maybe to play Lamb a little bit more in the slot, because he has been so effective when playing inside. And conventional wisdom maybe tells you to play your best wide receivers on the outside, but also you take a look at what some teams are doing around the league. And hey, even the Rams are an example of that. And I'm not saying that Lamb compares maybe to Cooper Kupp, because their play styles are different. But you can have an inside receiver that is your number 2 guy or even your number 1 guy. Because, for example, with Cooper Kupp, I would say that he's the number 1 guy in the Rams offense in terms of pass catchers. So, I don't know. There's that. Thank you, Noah, for your donation. I appreciate it. Thank you for that. And shout out to Noah Simmons, who is watching over here on YouTube. Thank you for being here. Cooper says Barry is 27. He will be 28 by the time the season starts, and a big part of our offense. His production is dependent upon the quarterback and the offensive coordinator, so lay the blame there, not on Coop. And this is something that I can get behind. I agree with Barry on that. I agree with him in that strongly. City should be played for sure and use him on the outside, says Kenneth Fraser. Jay says Cooper is a beast, not his fault. The offensive line sucked. And as you guys know, there is a lot of blame to throw around, because the truth is that a lot of things went wrong for the Cowboys offense. So yeah, anyways, those 3 were my 3 under the radar free agents: Carlos Watkins, Dorance Armstrong, and of course, Brent Urban. And before I leave you tonight, just 2 more topics real quick. Someone asked about compensatory picks. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. And that question stayed in the back of my mind. So I really just wanted to mention it today. The Cowboys are projected to have 1 compensatory pick, and it's a 5th rounder, according to overthecap.com. They're going to get that pick because of Andy Dalton. And of course, Over the Cap only puts out a projection. The official compensatory picks are not announced until weeks before the NFL draft, but the Cowboys are projected to have a 5th round compensatory pick. Remember, those are always important. Maybe not as much as some people would say, because some people really overrate comp picks, because some people want personnel decisions to be made around comp picks, and that is something that I personally do not like. I think that you need to look at this as what they are. They're compensatory. They are extra, to call it some way. So yeah, there's that, and I think that was important. I wanted to show you a picture, though, before we get to Random Thought Tuesday. But yeah, the red rifle, the red rifle always given. If it's not interceptions, it's comp picks. Says Cowboys Can fan. That is a good comment. That's better than nothing, says Kenneth Fraser. Yeah, that question was on the back of my mind, and I looked it up today, and I just wanted to bring that up with you guys. So, Random Thought Tuesday. Think about that. What is your Cowboys random thought of the week? I'm putting the question right now on the Facebook chat and the YouTube chat. Your random thought of the week. It can be anything related to the Dallas Cowboys. And while you think of yours, here is mine. 2022, I don't know if things will change. I don't know if we will see the Cowboys get past the wild card round, even less if they will get to the NFC Championship game. But I do know this. It is all pointing toward them wearing this, the alternate jerseys. Because if you guys remember, 2022 is the year in which the NFL is bringing back alternate helmets. And that is my random thought of the week, just seeing these bad boys back. I love those uniforms. I think I could even say they're my number 2 uniforms. What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat which are your favorite uniforms as well for the Dallas Cowboys. Because I love the white helmet and I love the classic look. And maybe it has to do with the fact that I'm 22 years old and maybe like these are the first Cowboys that this is the first generation that I got to see, like the Tony Romos. And of course, in 2010, I was 11 years old when Des Bryant got into the NFL. So I don't know. These uniforms mean a lot to me. I think these are one of my favorites. I think that my favorites are the white jerseys, but I think these are a close second. So some random thoughts. Iceberg says more West Coast system on offense and give the Air Coryell the boot. That is something that I can also get behind. Here is what I don't fully like, though. I don't fully like that the Cowboys should be having these maybe more mixed variation of Coryell and West Coast, because even though we like to put labels into these concepts, you take a look at most of the teams around the NFL and things are all blended together nowadays. I don't think that a lot of teams are really married to any of these schemes. It's just more of a combination of both. Will Moore and McCarthy remember how to use a running back and running back two since Bruce got the use? That is a random thought. Maybe not as random, but because this feels like one of the top complaints. I'm kidding, but hopefully they do. And hopefully they figure out who their true running back one is. That is another valid question, I believe. I want a blackout uniform, says TV Mac. I would like a blackout uniform for the Cowboys as well. Kenneth Fraser says, I think that we should keep most of our players and just get their offense and defense on point. And I would love to see those uniforms. The 94 jersey is the best, says Iceberg. Definitely one of the top ones. Random thought, will we finally close those darn sun curtains at AT&T Stadium? Well, if we are basing our answers on what Jerry Jones has actually told us, then no. Then the answer is a straight up no to that question. Because he was asked about the curtains and he just dismissed it already. Jerry Jones is selling us loyal fans out. He and his son are not really serious about winning the championship, says Tim Hall. No way that it takes 26 plus years for the most powerful owner in pro football. I've always had a lot of thoughts regarding the Jerry Jones doesn't really want to win conversation. I will save those for another show. But man, Tim, I can get behind your frustration though. America don't have a team, says Lumen. Now keep in mind, Lumen is a Titans fan, and this is a sensitive subject around Cowboys Nation. I've always thought that the conversation about the Cowboys no longer being America's team has always been misplaced, the conversation, because being America's team has never been about, maybe back in those championship days, but it's been more about popularity always and not really about winning lately, right? And I think that when a Cowboys fan, this is what I want to get to. I'm sorry for thinking out loud. When a Cowboys fan says we are America's team, we don't necessarily mean we are the best team in the NFL. We just mean it from what it means in terms of the fan base, the fact that it is one of the most popular, if not the most popular team in the NFL, the most valuable franchise in sports, and all of that. Let's see. Would the NFL be better? Says Dallas John. Random thought. Would the NFL be better off with a draft lottery, kind of like the NBA? Also prevents teams from tanking. I've never gotten behind the idea of the draft lottery, but that question, I will put that up in the air for more people to discuss, because it is a fair question. I've never gotten behind that idea. I've always liked the worst team getting the number one draft pick and all of that. And I think that the NFL has a good recipe for parity and you see it with the playoff teams with the teams that make the playoffs every year. When will the Cowboys? Ooh, I like this one. I like this one from Cowboys Can Fan. When will the Cowboys first host a home game in Mexico City? Jerry Jones talked about this. I think it was around December, was it, or early in January? We actually brought this up on Primetime. He did say that he was open to it, so that was big, I believe. He did say that it was not going to happen in 2022. There are some rumors out there that the 49ers are coming to Mexico City in 2022. But man, I would love to see the Cowboys here in Mexico City. And I've shared this fact a lot of times here on Primetime, but I will do it once again. The highest attendance game in the history of the NFL, including postseason, Super Bowls, all of it, is a preseason game between the Cowboys and the Houston Oilers that took place in Mexico City. A preseason game. And that is the NFL record for the highest attendance in the history of the game. And I think it's 112,700 and something like that. Mo, I'm glad that you said you're 22 and I gave this channel a chance. You actually know your stuff even though you look 15. Says Bruce, hey, I appreciate it. I really do. Sometimes people just look at someone, think they're young, and then just move on, right? But hey, Bruce, I appreciate you giving the chance, right? Let's see just one more random thought, and then we can move on from tonight's show. I agree with him, Mauricio, for being the most powerful owner. You think Jerry would have won way more championships than we have now, says Kenneth Fraser. And finally, Dallas Young says, we played the Jags this year. Hopefully, we go across the pond and play. Now, yeah, actually, that happened when? 2014? Cowboys and Jaguars playing in London. Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I will let you go. Hope you have a great Tuesday night. I will see you tomorrow and on Thursday. On Thursday, when we have the final show of the week, we will for sure discuss the Super Bowl 56, and maybe we talk about some prop bets. Maybe we talk about some of that stuff. And I will see you tomorrow night here on ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. As always, make sure you check out adcsports.com for more Cowboys articles, more Mavericks articles as well, including over there, Tim Hardaway Jr.'s injury has led to the rise of these two Mavs players. Defensive coordinator Dan Quinn never intended to leave this offseason. The offseason plan for Micah Parsons, you can also read that over there at adcsports.com/Dallas. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Dallas Young says this was an entertaining show. Thank you. I appreciate it. I will see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Central. Have a good one, guys.